Welcome, dear viewers, to Poetry Blows Your Blues Away. Friends, if we go wrong, our conscience pricks us, warns us, and guides us. Unless we have killed our conscience by paying a deaf ear to it, we have no one to blame but ourselves for our wrongdoings. Even the worst of villains have felt the pricks of conscience, only they chose to brush them away and rushed head on into the bottomless pit. Friends, herein comes Macbeth's soliloquy before he prepares himself to kill Duncan, to murder Duncan. Act 1, Scene 7 of the eponymous play Macbeth opens with this soliloquy. Uttered by the protagonist Macbeth, Macbeth has decided to kill Duncan, his king and cousin, that day his guest too. Already his conscience has started pricking him. So he blurts out this soliloquy, which gives us a peep into his heart, a peep into the inner drama. In Shakespeare, the inner drama is as marvelous as the external drama. Soliloquies mirror a character's inner conflict. Remove the soliloquies from the drama and only the skeleton remains. Here goes the soliloquy. If it were done when it is done, then it were well, it were done quickly. And if the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his Circe's success, but that this blow might be the be-all and end-all here. But here, upon this bank and shoal of time, we would jump the life to come. But in these cases, we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instructions, which being taught, return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He is here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. Then, as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife himself, not bear the knife myself. Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued, against the deep damnation of his taking off, and pity, like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim, horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on the other. This is the soliloquy. If it were done, when it is done, it were well, it were done quickly. The second it means killing of Duncan. If with the killing of Duncan, everything gets over, everything is finished, nothing follows, then I prefer doing it quickly, right away, says Macbeth. The repetition, if it were done, when it is done, it were well, it were done quickly, the repetition mirrors his dilemma and the struggle going on in his heart. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his Circe's success. In these lines, the hissing sounds, sa, sha, ja, sa, cha, ja, sounds, these sibilants, mirror the struggle taking place in his heart. If the murder can stop the consequences and catch success after it's done, he is ready to do it quickly. He wishes that that blow should be the be-all and end-all, at least here in this world. But even in this world, But here upon this bank and shoal of life, shoal of time, if he can skip a punishment in this life, he is ready to face external damnation in the life to come. But he says, we are not sure of escaping punishment even here. But in these cases, we still have judgment here. If we do some harm to others, it boomerangs to us, because this justice is even-handed, fair, unbiased, impartial. So if you hand over a poisoned cup to somebody, it comes back to your own lips. Friends, we see exactly this happening in another tragedy written by Shakespeare, Hamlet. King Claudius gets ready a poisoned cup to kill Hamlet. But unwittingly, Queen Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, drinks it and dies. In the Macbeth reflects on Duncan's character. He is here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. Then, as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Here he considers how wrong it is to kill Duncan. Duncan is his cousin and king. Double trust. Besides, he is also his guest. So, he should shut the door against somebody who comes to kill him. How can he bear the knife himself? So clearly, Macbeth analyzes his situation. He further says, besides this, Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued, against the deep damnation of his taking off. This is how he describes his murder. And pity, like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow this horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. Loaded with imagery, Shakespeare gives two beautiful similes to picture the piteous plight, the horror of the situation. Duncan is such an honest person and is such a good king. His virtues will plead like angels. They will shout like trumpets against his killing, against the deep damnation of his taking off. And pity, like a naked newborn babe, newborn babe, shall appear in the skies and blow this deed in every eye. So piteously will the cherubim in the air plead that tears shall drown the wind. I have nothing, says Macbeth, to spur my deed, to instigate my deed, but only vaulting ambition, overleaping itself and falling on the other side. Excessive ambition is aptly phrased. His only spur is his limitless ambition. Here he ends the soliloquy as Lady Macbeth enters the scene. Finally, fully aware of the moral implications and risks, with his eyes fully open, he commits the cruel murder. So, as T.S. Eliot rightly says, after such knowledge, what forgiveness? So, his punishment has already started. In Act 2, Scene 2, Macbeth says, Macbeth does murder sleep. Macbeth shall sleep no more. By killing Duncan, he kills his own peace of mind. Severe guilt plagues him throughout, and his life becomes a living death. His life becomes a living death, and he becomes mad. Lady Macbeth, who was a partner to the crime, suffers even more, as we see in her sleepwalking scenes. So the takeaway is we should keep a clear conscience, and the softest pillow you can lay your head on is a clean and clear conscience. If we declare like Antonio in Shakespeare's The Tempest, I feel not this deity in my heart, in my bosom, 20 consciences that stand betwixt me and Milan, candid be they, and melt ere they molest, says Antonio. Then we have to lose our precious sleep, the innocent sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast. Glamis has murdered sleep. Khadar shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more. So friends, let us cultivate the habit of listening to the whispers of our conscience whenever we are about to take a wrong step. And then peace and prosperity follow, and we become better versions of ourselves. That's all for now. See you soon with yet another marvelous piece of poetry in my next episode. Till then, happy poetry reading.